You ready?
Yeah, sure. I blame Tom for this. Don't follow my Twitter because I don't Twitter. I use this thing, Google+. This is my digital heritage. I don't also use PowerPoint. I don't quite understand it, so this is, again, something of my digital heritage. I want to talk about York's digital heritage. I really came across this last week in a meeting when people were talking about the great heritage of this city, which is basically built on 2,000 years of waste. Remember that. And those 2,000 years of waste have been interpreted by different people, and here this is an image of the cloisters in the Minster by one of the digital heritage companies at York, whose logo doesn't appear on this slide. I thought this might happen. I'm not used to PowerPoint when it's been translated. This is an interesting aspect of the heritage of the city. Here's another. This is a different kind of digital heritage. This is the hands of monks and scribes writing documentary evidence on parchment stored in the Borthwick Archive. If you've been there, it's an amazing place. It's a wonderful heritage, and it's now being scanned, so that digital heritage is available to all of us. But I want to make a kind of diversion away from that to a different kind of digital heritage, which I thought the meeting I was in was actually talking about. And this is a huge transformation in all of our lives, which is only just becoming aware of. We are all, obviously, the sons and daughters of our parents and grandparents. And what's happened is this transformation has been in the ability to read the genetic information present in us and interpret that. And if you think about it, we are basically made up of lots and lots of elements from our past which actually are reflected in our genes. So in fact, we are a population in effect. And this is a very nice illustration of that from Charlotte Newman. So we are made up of the people of our past. And what's really happened is a dramatic change in the cost of sequencing total genomes. This year it will be £2,000. By 2060 it will be £20 to sequence a whole genome. And this has dramatic effects on our ability to understand our heritage. This is an example of a machine which costs £550. It's a throwaway genome sequencer. It'll be out the middle of this year, and it'll sequence 130 million base pairs of DNA. Throwaway DNA sequencing. So when we think about digital heritage, we can now do these crazy things like sequence our genomes and find our genetic relatives. This is a company called 23andMe, owned by the wife of one of the founders of Google. So this kind of ability to get sequence information is transforming heritage. Which is why when I went to the Borthwick Archive, I didn't see this series of beautiful manuscripts. I saw this very differently. Thinking about what's now available, I thought about those wonderful parchments which stretch back over 800,000 years, and I saw them as essentially a heritage of genetics from all of the sheep and cows that have made up those parchments year on year on year. And that allows us to do some pretty amazing things if you think about it. We can think about the domestication of these animals over the last 200 years. What about the impact of the loss of the monasteries, that huge big industrial complex thrown apart by King Henry VIII? What about the impact of major challenges like the Black Death? And what about these crazy events, which we can hardly think about now? Talking about bad weather, this is really bad weather. This is the case of 1258, apparently no growing season. And it gets much worse. What happens when we go back to about 536 AD? What we find is that, wrong way around these slides. When I'm thinking about the Borthwick Archive, it's basically a Rosetta Stone of transforming genetics over the last 800 years. Each of those sheets of parchment is a genetic record with time and place written on it. And if we can understand that genetic record, we can think back again to York, because inside York in this landfill, we have an amazing preservation of organic remains. So we can look at the bones of the sheep in York and link them back to this parchment genetic records and tie everything together. If you think about that amazing archaeology of the city, and you think about it in terms of the kinds of DNA records within it, we haven't just got the records of sheep and cattle and their genomics. We have the records of people of the past. And so the ability, if we've got it in these genetic companies now, to find your fifth cousin based upon modern genomic sequencing, now means we can not just go wide, we can start going deep. And we can start seeing what the relationships are between the people that live in York today and the people in the past. And I would argue that this is probably the most exciting genetic heritage we have, because we have such a remarkable archive, both of documentary evidence and of preserved molecules in this city. So my final thought is that the true genetic heritage of York is written not as ones and zeros, but as the letters A, T, C, and G. And so these rather strange Microsoft clip art figures, which have no relationship to anything, we can actually begin to pull together the information that they contain, understand not only our relationships with each other, but our relationships with the past. So as I say, the digital heritage of York is arguably the heritage present in the DNA sequences. And I think we're in a great position now to really begin to exploit that in the city. So don't